Very much. Good evening, everyone, and thanks to all for your participation in this membership meeting of the Cooperative and Condominium Advisory Council. As Tim alluded to earlier, we have an all-star roster, and we are certainly looking forward to the input that we will receive from our panel members. It is my pleasure to introduce Stuart Betheil, tonight's program moderator. Stuart is the principal of Fleet West Management Corporation, a consulting firm on disaster preparedness and disaster responses. He is also a member of the board of directors of the Advisory Council of Managing Agents of the Building and Realty Institute. Stuart is no stranger to the memberships of our Cooperative and Condominium Advisory Council and the Building and Realty Institute. He has regularly addressed membership meetings of both groups on the topics of disaster preparedness and disaster responses. He was a regular guest on the former radio. Excuse me, I'm sorry. He was a regular guest on the former radio shows of the Building and Realty Institute and has already made an appearance on Building Knowledge with the Building and Realty Institute, the BRI's new podcast series. He is, without question, an expert on the content of tonight's meeting. Again, it is my pleasure to introduce Stuart Betheil, a true asset to our organizations. Stuart, it's all yours.
Very good. Can everybody hear me? Everybody hear me?
You're good, Stuart.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
555.
All right, great. Thank you much. Well, I wanted to first thank all of the presenters for going through that whole process that we put together in order to arrive at our meeting tonight. And we have a wide range of presenters that will cover many different aspects of emergency and disaster preparedness. And it's important that the Builders Institute and the membership understand that boards of directors and co-op managing agents have a unique ear to deal with. And by that, I mean the people in the buildings that they manage and that they administrate need to be reached and need to be a part of preparedness efforts of the community. And I've been stressing that over the years, and I look forward to you all getting the information you need in order to move that type of program forward. So I've prepared a few introductory slides for your review, and I'm going to put that up now. We go. Right. We just put out on a full screen. Okay, here we go. It's obviously a time to prepare. As I said before the meeting was convened, we had a water main break in White Plains, where a good part of the city was left without water for several hours today. And that just points out the need to be vigilant and never know when things are going to happen. Again, boards of directors and managing agents need to understand their role in preparing and responding and recovering from emergencies and disasters. That's what the meeting's about tonight. These are some of the possibilities that we have for disasters or emergencies in our community here and in the Hudson Valley. This is a short list of the most prevalent type of disasters and emergencies that can occur. One of the most important things that boards and managing agents need to do is create a plan. Individual buildings have to have a plan. Individual managing agencies should have a disaster plan in case they should be affected by the any kind of disaster or emergency. How will they be able to continue to deliver their services? And of course, boards are the shepherds of their individual building communities. And it's important, without a plan, nothing can take place. And again, in the planning effort, you see items that I've enumerated. Educating residents and staff is critical. People with special needs, procedures, and any other at-risk residents have to be identified, and program planning has to be engaged in for them. You can't do anything without good communications. We need to have receivers, and in many cases, I'm advising people get satellite phones, one per building. That's something that would more than less likely to be in effect should there be an emergency. Other types of communication are not guaranteed. Satellite, for the most part, is. These are an example of some of the things that you can get from the government. CPR, first aid, emergency management offices around the region all provide information that is useful to boards and managing agents. Participation with community response organizations is critical. Red Cross, community emergency response teams, and the others listed. Important for people to be a part of these local response communities. The more people that participate, the better it will be. Then first responders can devote their energies to really important emergencies where the volunteers in many cases can help stabilize the community and allow time for the first responders to do their job. This is just a list of the important items. Again, we'll make that available to the organization in order to be able to get it to you as you need it. Pets and service animals, very important. Many people have pets. It's important that we manage their care during an emergency. These are some resources that will be, again, part of the presentation that you can get from the AOAC. And this is one of my favorite sayings, and it comes from our good friend, William Shakespeare. Believe me, this is a guide for emergency preparedness and response. Thank you very much. And now I'll turn it back over to Jeff, and we can move ahead with our other presenters this evening.
Stuart, thank you very much. All right, our first panel member this evening is Nelson Vaz, the warning coordinator, meteorologist for the National Weather Service. Nelson, if you're ready to go, we're ready to hear you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that introduction. Let me share my screen here. So yeah, just real quickly. So my name, again, Nelson Vaz. I'm the warning coordination meteorologist with the National Weather Service New York. I've been here for 22 years. Are you guys seeing my screen?
We are.
Yes. Yeah, okay, and then let's see, and just to make sure it's moving. Is it moving ahead with slides or back? Not yet, not yet. Oops.
It's moving.
Oh, it's moving. Okay,
fine.
thank you.
Looks great.
All right. So yeah, just to give you a quick rundown of who we are. So what I'm gonna, and Stuart reached out to me, you know, and I think perfect for this in terms of preparedness and planning, is to look a little bit about, you know, kind of what are we expecting in kind of a changing kind of climate environment. What are some of the hazards we need to think about for Westchester County, Lower Hudson Valley? And, you know, just before I get into that, I want to say, you know, I am and us at the National Weather Service, we're not experts in terms of climate, but we have our colleagues at the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center and also the NOAA climate.gov, who really are the experts. And so we have the ability to interface with them. And so what I'm going to share tonight is really a kind of a summarization of a lot of the key points in terms of what are some things we are concerned about going into the future in terms of a warming planet. So just for in terms of us, we are the National Weather Service office that's serving, you can probably see in the lower right here, serving the local tri-state area. 19 million people, but really for us, it's our federal government mandate, protection of life and property through the weather observations, weather information, weather warnings, and the weather support that we provide to public safety officials. Gary Tuthill is on here from New York State DHSES. We work with Westchester County Emergency Management. That's a really big part of what we do. It's not just putting out the forecast warnings, but also connecting those forecasts with our decision makers to really help keep our community safe. And it's not just the 7-day forecast. We do marine forecast, storm surge forecast, fire weather, aviation forecast, very busy aviation weather, airspace, and like I said, the impact decision support services. But let's jump into the into the climate section. And again, this is a lot of information from our NOAA climate scientists who are part of the intergovernmental panels on climate change and national climate assessment panels. So first thing, just the globe, the Earth is warming, and how are we able to tell that? And one of the things is just observations. This is just kind of a chart. And you can, this is looking at, global land and ocean, observations. And really, like, kind of, you can see the 0 degrees Celsius line. That's the average temperature if you go from 1901 to 2020. And the big thing is just looking at the trend. If you kind of go before the 1940s, temperatures on annual average temperatures were below, that mean. But then what you can certainly see is that marked increase here over the last 40 years. And part of that kind of the increase in greenhouse gases and latest climate scientists certainly showing the human kind of impact on that. But also, before the 1950s kind of discussion of the aerosols that were in the air almost kind of counteracting the increased greenhouses. But since the 1950s, 1960s, the air pollution acts have kind of decreased the aerosols, but have remained at a high level of greenhouse gases, which has caused that warming. And so some factors that we can see besides those air temperatures and water temperatures, the other things we're seeing is, the other symptoms. We're seeing melting of the snow caps, melting of the glaciers, thermal expansion of the oceans, melting of sea ice. So all that is just kind of in addition to the temperature increases, as well as humidity increases, all kind of signs of the warming planet. And then, all right, so those are the trends we've seen, but what about going into the future? You guys may be familiar with some of the, they call them RCPs, Representative Concentration Pathways. The latest assessment, the 5th National Climate Assessment, is not only taking in the effects and the projections of greenhouse gases on temperature rises, but it's also looking at socioeconomic factors. So they call the shared socioeconomic pathways, but very similar to the concentration pathways from previous studies. Basically, kind of from where we are, even the low end scenarios where if we're at the peak of greenhouse gases today, and they're going to be, and aerosols, and they're going to be decreasing, still through mid-century, you're still looking at an increase in global temperatures and then a flatlining. But if there's nothing done to curb those greenhouse gas emissions, some of these very high scenarios are possible where we could be looking at global temperatures warming several degrees, 10 or more degrees Fahrenheit. And it's really around 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit due to 2 degrees Celsius, where climate scientists have concern where there could be some irreparable damage in terms of our planet or in terms of our climate. So let's talk about what are the the strongest correlations to a warming planet in terms of sensible weather. One of them is in terms of heat waves and increased heat across the United States, and specifically we're interested in the local area. This is just looking at what are the trends have been over the last kind of really the last 80 years or so, or 60 years or so. And kind of looking at from that pre 1950s period to kind of modern day periods. If you look at the number of 95-degree days, kind of comparing those 20-year periods from pre and post. We're not a big difference in the 90-degree days, but what we have seen is a market difference, decrease in the number of cold days, so below 32-degree days, and also a market difference in the overnight warm nights, where we're seeing an increase in the warm nights. So not necessarily as much in the heat waves, but what the projections are into the future. What we're looking at, this is actually the Climate Explorer, which is looking at these different scenarios, the low to high end scenarios, and looking at the climate models that are the same models that are being looked at for these climate change scenarios, and looking at so average right now for White Plains, Westchester County is about 90-degree days in a year. Even the low-end emission scenarios are showing by mid-century we could be looking at 3 times more, maybe 30 days, and by the end of the century, 40 days. Now that's the low-end scenario. If you go to the high-end emission scenario, where you could be talking about by mid-century, we're talking about 4 times more, maybe 40, 90-degree plus days, and by the end of the century, you're approaching 100 days. So that's just a couple of the scenarios in terms of the heat expectations to increase. The other thing we've seen, definitely kind of a notable increase in is extreme rainfall. Just this winter we've probably seen some of the wettest winter, one of the wettest winters in terms of high-end rainfall amounts in the winter. Numerous storms where we've seen 3 to 4 inches of rain from December through March. And so if you look at kind of the climate record here, looking especially over the last 60 years, where the highest increase in terms of those 1% rainfall events, those highest, those extreme rainfall events have been across the northeastern United States, a 55 to 60% increase compared to the average over the last century. And then if you look at kind of future scenarios, low or high emissions, we're looking for a continued increase in these extreme rainfall events. So, not only you have the heaviest rainfall events are getting heavier, but they're also counting these kind of extreme kind of rainfall events that may be one day or over a few hours are accounting for more of that average or more of that total rainfall. So, just more in terms of impacts from heavy rainfall. And that ties in, really well in terms of a warming planet can hold more moisture. So it makes sense in terms of why we're seeing these heavier rainfall amounts. The other thing that, so you have the increase in temperatures, increase in rainfall. The other thing is sea level rise. So coastal flooding, another concern up the Hudson River, along the Long Island Sound in Westchester. Over the last 100 years, we've seen a 1-foot rise in sea level rise. The projections, even mid-range projections, or we could see another foot rise by the mid-century. So what we're talking about is 10 times more or 5 to 7 times more flood days than we see right now. So we could be talking about right now, we're seeing about 7 to 10 days where we have coastal flooding. We could be talking about, that's something more 35 to 50 35 to 50 days with coastal flooding as we go to mid-century. Moderate coastal flood events, we have 2 to 3 right now. We could be talking more 20 to 30 as you go mid-century. So, certainly that in addition to some of the compounding effects that we see in Westchester, we have the concern with heavy rainfall, urban flooding, riverine flooding, and compounding with tidal flooding. Really not a good combination for Westchester County. The other thing, so you look in terms of flooding risks, we talk about, so the coastal flooding increase, but then in terms of average annual losses, this is from the 5th National Climate Assessment. Right now we're talking about, tens of millions of dollars in terms of losses, annually. And then the projection as we go into mid-century is even a 20% increase on top of that. So last couple of slides, I know just another thing in terms of interest in hurricanes and maybe, large coastal storms, nor'easters. So the latest science on that, not as strong correlations as the sea level rise, precipitation, and temperature, but what the kind of the current consensus is with the NOAA scientists is that we are not necessarily going to see more tropical storms or hurricanes or even nor'easters as we go into the into the mid and late century. But what we could see is a fewer, maybe by 10 to 15%. But those more of those, even though a fewer number, more of those could be severe. So maybe the Cat 4 and Cat 5, so higher end storms. So you have that potential. Also, with the increased sea level rise, that's going to, that is a higher base for storm surge and more destructive storm surge events. And we talked about, being able to hold more moisture with these storms, so more rainfall. Again, the compounding effects to this area, not a good scenario. And just last couple of slides, just for reference. So our National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center, or our colleagues, if you're looking for information, more in kind of in the weekly to seasonal range, what are the temperature and precipitation outlooks? What are maybe the threats in the 8 to 14 days for, could be anywhere from coastal flooding to flooding, high winds, heat, winter weather. This is a great website to take a look at. And also, if you're interested in things like El Nino, ENSO, and other teleconnections, Climate Prediction Center are the experts on that. And then if you're looking for more information on climate change science, adaptation, and mitigation, the latest news in that, climate.gov. So these are these are the NOAA, really some of the top NOAA experts who are providing information for this. So, with that, I will end right there and pass it back to our hosts.
Nelson, thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you, Nelson. Excellent presentation. We're lucky enough tonight to have two presenters from Con Edison, Belkys Mateo, Senior Specialist, Customer Outreach and Education, and Kristina Gallo, a Senior Planning Analyst, Customer Outreach and Education. We will go first with Belkys Mateo. Belkys, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. And just a correction, Kristina is on, but I will be doing the presentation. So if any questions, I'll be able to answer. She's having trouble connecting, but I will be doing the presentation. All right, so. Can you see my screen?
It's loading up right now. There it is.
Nice.
Excellent. I can't see it. Is it on presentation mode or?
It's not yet.
Not yet. All right. So let's see if it'll do it here. It's where we normally use Teams, and it's a lot easier than doing it this way. Let me know when it's ready because I can't see it from here. Oops. Okay. Are you able to see it now?
Unfortunately, no. It's still looking like the main PowerPoint window.
Oh, no.
I have seen you click on from beginning a few times, but it just hasn't taken it.
Yes. Not sure why it's not doing it. All right, so let me stop sharing this way, and then I'll try to open it here and see if it'll work this way. Sorry about that. Oops. Okay. I am so sorry. I guess I will have to do it this way. It's not allowing me to change it. So, are you still able to see my screen?
No, you should share screen again.
Okay. So, let's try again. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Yep. For some reason, it doesn't want to go to presentation mode. But good evening. My name, again, is Belkys Mateo. I am a senior specialist in customer outreach and education. I work in Con Ed, and one of our main responsibility for our department is to educate customers. So this is a great topic for us, especially because we're getting ready to see more inclement weather. So I'm really happy and excited that I'm able to be here and present on the things that we do to prepare for a storm. Um, so I'm gonna get right to it. So for tonight, we're gonna touch on preparing for an outage, how to items to have for preparing when home, especially having a checklist is very essential. That way, if something was to happen, then you'll know how the family to react. Also, going to talk about how the reporting and the tracking of the outage, how that it has changed a little bit throughout the years. And also, we're going to touch on some of the safety tips during an outage. And I'm going to touch on claims for possible any spoilage of food or medication, and also how we handle water leaks or tree trimming during an event. Right. So the first thing, how do we prepare for an outage? So we always make sure that the contact information with the customer is up to date. The reason being is because customers do have the ability to get information, right? Once you report that you don't have service, then you'll be able to track the outage. You'll be able to get information on your via text or via email. That information will be given to you, but for that, we will have to have the information to be up to date. Something else that's very important is for customers that have any life sustaining equipment or LSC. I believe it was on the presentation that Stuart had where it was showing someone being carried out. Life support equipment customers is very essential because we do reach out to customers before the event, during the event, and after the event. We want to ensure that customers that have any of those equipment that are operated with electricity have the opportunity to make arrangements prior to the event. And so we always communicate again before the event, during the event, and after the event. Um, Another thing is the medication. We want to ensure that customers have their medication at hand. So if we are suspecting of an outage and the information is noted on the account that the customer is concerned, elderly, or have any medical condition, we also let them know in advance. And then, of course, the checklist. In order to have any be successful in any type of events, it's always good to have a plan at hand. So it's always good to not be caught on the dark, to have be prepared with your light bulbs or flashlights. We know how dangerous it is to have candles, so we always let customers know to have a kid at home to be ready at any time just because we don't know when any event can happen. We always want to ensure that customers know about having their electronics fully charged, especially if it's something that we know that's going to happen, like their cell phones or laptops, or if they have any radios that are battery operated. It's good to have at hand. That way they can know what's going on as the event is taking place. And keeping it cool, we want to ensure that if you have your freezer and refrigerator, that they should be set at the coolest temperature. That is to make sure that the food or any medication that may be in the refrigerator can stay good for longer time, depending on how long of the outage. And we also request for customers to have water. It's always good to stack up for water, again, because we don't know on the event. I do remember when Sandy happened, we were not expecting that it was going to be that big of a storm. And so a lot of people were taken by surprise. So having water at hand is always good. And then it's always good to protect major appliances. Just because sometimes when we are repairing services, we may have something, that may come too sudden and it can make damage to your appliances. So it's always good to keep your electronics on a surge protector to avoid any spike on the usage. And always to have your car full of gas. Again, just depending on the event that we may experience, we always let customer know to be ready in the event that there may be a shortage of gas. So it's always good to have that ready. So for reporting and tracking the outage, again, there's many ways to report an outage. That can be done online, and it's very easy at connect.com /outage, or they can simply call our customer service. Our customer service is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. and they can take your information and report your outage. And once the outage is reported, you can get updates. If you are signed with to receive text, you'll be able to track your outage. You'll be able to get updates as we work to restore your service. And that's also something very easy that people can do in order to be able to get their text. And there's also the tool of the outage map. And with the outage map is you're able to see what's going on in your neighborhood, how many people are out. So it'll give you a lot of good information by being able to go online and follow the outage map. And this is an example of what the outage map looks like. It basically goes into the neighborhood, and again, it tells you the number of customers that are out, and it'll give you a specific information regarding your outage, right? And so in here, it just, again, it just tells you how many customers are out, if there's what problem was reported, the cause, and what the status of the cruise is, which in the past, we had to wait to get that information. So now this is available to customers. And again, it's more easy to be able to track the restoration time. And for the safety tips, again, having a battery operated radio, it's very essential, because that way you can keep track and up to date as to what's going on. Having a flashlight, especially if you have small children, it's always good to have at hand. Be ready to have it, just because we want to stay away from candles. And also check on your neighbors. It's very important to check with your neighbors. During Sandy, my 77-year-old neighbor, she was alone, and she depended on us, the neighbor, to be able to reach out to her during this time. And for customers that live in buildings where they have elevators, to understand that no elevators will be during that time of emergency. And so for people that have a condition that may not be able to get out and they live on a high floor, it's always good to let someone know in the building, so that way in the event of an emergency, they'll know what to do. Unplugging the appliances. Again, if there is a surge or spike in the service as we are working to reconnect, it's always good to have it unplugged, so that way there's no damage to any appliances. Keeping the refrigerator door closed the more that we can, that way it can continue to keep the temperature, and that way there will be no spoilage of food or medicine. And something very, very important is to stay away from down wires. Um, Typically, we think it's not live, but we always want to assume that it's live. So we always let customers know, do not get close to any wires, as we don't know, if it may be electrified. And if for customers that do have generators, then that's a plus. To have a generator at hand, and ensure that that the gas is available if it's operated by gas. So always having those essentials before an event, that will make the event to be a lot easier to deal with. And lastly, for any spoilage of food or medication, there is a claims process. Customers can submit a claim if they believe that the cause of the loss of their food or any medication was caused because of CONED. There's also a very easy way to submit that claim. That can be done online by going to outage claims at coned.com, or going to coned.com low claims. Once that's processed, then you'll be able to get more information on that, but it's very easy to submit a claims for any spoilage or medications. And for water leaks, we know that sometimes when there is any type of events that may result in water leaks, we often get customers that call in wanting us to go to make the repairs right away. But if there's a water leak and it's rain, we have to wait for the rain to cease, for the rain to stop, in order for us to be able to make that. So we thought it was important to be able to show the steps on how we work to be able to do the water leak repairs, just because, again, customers often think I'm reporting it, somebody's coming right away. But no, we do have to wait until the weather permits for us to go out and to safely correct the water leak. Tree trimming is another big element that at times when there is an inclement weather prevents for us to be able to restore services fast. And so we do take the approach of the tree trimming. We do inspect the trees to ensure that is something that is able to be done. We are prune. We want to make sure that the tree that we are trimming is able to be removed or to trim it, and we want to make sure that it's at the right place and the right time. And of course, planting safely. We want to ensure that it's not something that's going to be intervening with our wires and can potentially, bring down and cut down the service. So that's all the information that I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Belkys. We will have a question and answer session at the conclusion of the presentations.
Great.
Our next panel member is Mike Niles with the City of White Plains Fire Department. Mike, if you are ready, you can begin.
Yes, hello. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, my name is Lieutenant Michael Niles. I've been with the White Plains Fire Department for 19 years, and I've been in the role of Lieutenant and CEO for the past 7. So part of my job as being a CEO is to get out and do inspections on the ever-growing city of White Plains. During our inspections, we do it in all different types of buildings. We do it in 3 families. We do it in multi-story high-rise residential and commercial, storefronts, pretty much everything except for 1 and 2 family buildings. During our inspections, our job is to get out there to spread the word and to educate the public on what to do and what not to do as far as fire prevention. So we're going to talk about smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, fire extinguishers, what types to have, what types to use in certain types of fires, emergency lighting, storage in combustible storage in certain areas where we want them or we don't want them, and wiring issues, mainly in storefronts, people using extension cords in the place of permanent wiring. That is a no-go for us. So those are certain things that we're going to touch on in the next few minutes. Let me see if I can pull up my screen. Perfect. Is it in the full view?
It looks great.
Perfect. Okay, so you can see by the stats, 1 out of every 3 people has experienced a fire in their lifetimes. Obviously, I've experienced a lot more than probably most of you. And part of the our prevention that we're doing, getting out there, spreading the word and educating the public, is to prevent people from getting hurt. Obviously, fire is a very dangerous situation. So our job is to get out there and communicate. And pretty much when we're doing our inspections in these buildings is to go through the buildings with either the engineer or, a representative who is managing the building, and walk through it with them and give them heads up on what things they can do to help improve the, fire prevention in the building itself, as well as helping them to educate the individual members that are staying throughout these buildings. Even though we get access to these buildings and we get in them, we are not allowed to get into living quarters. So that is where you'll have your engineers and your management company will come in handy in helping to relay the information that we give to them, to their tenants and the people staying in these buildings. So hopefully they can educate them to put them in a better position. All right, again, there's a few things we're going to talk about: fire prevention, and
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but we do see your PowerPoint window open, but your slides are not advancing.
Oh, no, you're still at the fire truck?
We're still on slide 1. Yep.
Okay, let me see. Is that different now?
Yep, we see slide 3.
Okay, I'll go from there then. So obviously the first thing with preventing fires is educating the public, which is another thing that we do to get out there and spread the word. So first things that we talk about with people is how to prevent them. Step 1 is having smoke detectors that are actually working. So we're going to tell people that, check your detectors at least once a week. I know realistically that's probably not going to happen, but we try and tell people to check them once a week, if not at least once a month. And you should change your batteries twice a year. Now, the way that we like to do it is we tell people that whenever daylight savings comes around, whenever we change the clocks, go forward and go back. We say that's an easy time to change your batteries, change your clocks, change your batteries and your smoke detectors. It's easy to remember, and hopefully it's helpful for people going forward. You should always know the phone number for your local fire department. If anyone here is in White Plains, has a building in White Plains, our fire department gets dispatched through our police department. So that is our number there, 914-422-6111. That is our White Plains Police Dispatch. Obviously, 911 always works, but I encourage people who are in other cities to get in touch with their fire department, get a direct line to them. Going through 911 is always great, but that goes through the call station in Albany. Then Albany has to contact the municipality, and then they have to call us. So there is a little delay there. If you happen to have the fire department's number, you get a direct line to them. It gets us out the door faster. And as we know, with newer materials, newer construction, fire doubles in size every minute. So the faster that we get called there, the faster we get on the scene, the faster we get water on the fire, more lives can be saved. Like I said, smoke detectors should be in the hallways of all their buildings. Whether you have a type 1 residential high rise, or you have an older style sticks and bricks wood building, more garden style apartments, should always have smoke detectors in common hallways. Also, you should have smoke detectors in the living quarters. It always needs to be inside the bedrooms, but we also recommend having one in the living room right outside of the kitchen. We don't recommend having one in the kitchen, just in case people actually burn their food for dinner, don't want to set it off accidentally, but you want to have it somewhere close in that area. So God forbid something does happen, gets out of hand, it will alert the people in the premises early enough. Like I said, you should be testing it once a week and also changing those batteries twice a year. One thing that I know that a lot of the newer buildings, these high rises, these type 1 high rises that are going up, they all have floor plans on those buildings. They usually have them at the staircases. Most of these buildings have 2 to 3 stairwells in them. So right by those stairwells, they know where the evacuation plan is. Very good for people to be familiar with these plans, understanding that you should always have 2 means of egress in these type 1 high-rise buildings. Like I said, there's usually 2 to 3 stairwells, so you know which one you can go out, depending on where there may be an emergency inside your building. The older style garden apartments, most of those have fire escapes on the outside of those units. So if you had a fire in the hallway, coming into your apartment, obviously if there's smoke banked down, and we don't want you going out that front door, being overcome by smoke. So if you have a fire escape, use that fire escape. Heat safety with space heaters. Obviously, this is not more of an issue in the newer buildings, but in those older garden style buildings, if you have an issue with the heating and people tend to use space heaters, we recommend keeping it 3 feet from anything combustible. We do not like to run it for too long. Got to give it some time off. Don't want that thing overheating. Don't use extension cords if you don't have to. It creates a tripping hazard, knocking that thing over. And never use an oven or a stove to heat your apartment. Cooking safety. Obviously, a lot of people cook these days. The number one thing that comes with that is grease fire. So when people are cooking, usually they're using some sort of oil, olive oil, avocado oil, whatever it is. And people freak out when there starts a fire. And what's the first thing they do? They grab a large thing of water, throw it on there. And as we know, water does not mix well with oil, and that's just going to create a bigger flame. Now that flame's going to reach up to those cabinets, having that catch on fire, and it's going to create a bigger hazard than it is. So number one thing you should do if you have the fire on your cooking on your stovetop, first thing you should do is turn the heat source off. Whether you have a gas stove or electric stove, just turn that burner off. And if you have a lid, throw that lid on top of that pot. That'll suffocate it and put it out. If you have a fire on something that's inside the oven, we just recommend close the oven door, turn the oven off, turn off the heat source, leave that door closed. Obviously, call the fire department right away. We'll get there, but at least it's being contained to inside that stove. Smoking, hopefully no one here is smoking with everything we know about smoking these days. But if you do smoke, just make sure that you put your cigarette out completely, whether you're on the couch, in bed, whatever it may be. Just make sure it's out completely before you go to bed. Same thing with candles. If you have candles, everyone likes to have some scented candles, make it smell good around the unit. If you have those, They all come with tops now. Just don't blow them out. Make sure you put that top on. That's going to kill the air to it and put that candle out. Key points to remember, obviously, the smoke detectors, maintaining them, staying on top of them, escape plans, have the, I don't know if you guys have conferences that you can do with your members to review those with them. Obviously, they should know, which stairway leads to which exits throughout the building. There's always going to be fire extinguishers on those floors. If need be, people can grab them, but we don't want people to really be heroes. But if you think that you can put that fire out by yourself, it's okay to grab that extinguisher. We recommend that managing companies tell their tenants to have extinguishers in their units, in their apartments, somewhere near the kitchen. That's where it's most likely going to happen. So that way, if they can keep it small, keep it contained, and put it out themselves, we're all for people being proactive, but at the same time, we don't want anyone putting themselves in harm's way. So if you don't feel comfortable doing that, then we don't want you putting yourself in a dangerous situation. I'm going to switch slides real quick just to go over the fire extinguishers. So we have 4 different classes of fires. Class A is wood, paper, cloth, stuff of that. Class B fire is anything that's a flammable liquid, oils, gasolines, greases. Class C is going to be electrical fire, and Class D is combustible metals. If it's anything involving C or D, we highly recommend that you do not get involved with any of that. But we do have, different types of extinguishers to deal with each one of these. Now, some are more common than others. The all-purpose water can is not something that we really recommend, because in most units, the biggest type of fire that you're going to have is going to be that grease fire, that oil fire, and water does not mix well with that. So we don't recommend people getting those. The best is really going to be the multi-purpose dry chemical fire extinguisher. That's considered you have class B and C, but you also have class A, B, and C. Those are the most useful. Those are the best ones that you could possibly have. As you can see here, it's a little description of your little CO2 one, and then you have your class A, B, and C one. Now, I'm sure most people aren't really too familiar with how to use a fire extinguisher. So I'm going to go over the steps of that real quick. We have a, pretty good method here. It's called PASS. So the first thing is going to be pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. So obviously, once you have your fire extinguisher in hand, the first thing that you do is pull the pin out of it. This will allow you to use the handle. After that, we want you to aim at the base of the fire.
Sorry to interrupt again. We're not seeing the fire extinguisher slide.
Oh, no?
I see your cursor moving over it, but we're still on the in case of fire in my unit, quickly decide if I can extinguish the fire.
Okay, let me go here. Share that. Got that?
There it is.
There it is. Okay. So the P is for pull again. So we're going to pull the pin. That gives you access to actually using the handle. A is aim at the base of the fire. People tend to see the flames and obviously they panic. So they just try and shoot it at the flames. But what is actually burning, what is combustible is going to be at the base of that fire. So that's where you want to put your extinguishing agent. Next is going to be squeeze the handle, and that'll actually activate the extinguisher. And then we say sweep, go from side to side. So if you have, something that's on the floor and it's about a 4x4 area, you're going to want to pull it, aim, squeeze, and then sweep that nozzle back and forth across the floor. Like I said, we don't really want people doing this if it's very small and it's confined to a small area and you feel comfortable in your skills and your knowledge of working with extinguishers. Then you'd be doing everyone a great service by putting it out right away. But like I said, we don't want people putting themselves in harm's way or doing anything that they are uncomfortable with. I am going to go switch back to our other slide now. No, I'm sorry. That's the wrong one. Okay. So like I said, if you can put it out and you feel comfortable and you're not going to put yourself in harm's way, we feel confident that you can do that. If there is a fire in your unit, obviously, if it's in the kitchen and you are forced to retreat and get out of there, do it for your safety. Make sure you tell anyone else that is in the unit to get out with you. the kitchen is obviously an open area. There's no doors closing that area off, so you can't limit it to that room. But if you did have a fire, whether it started from a candle or someone smoking or an electrical hazard in a bedroom or something of that nature, if it starts in there and you're unable to put it out, obviously we want you to exit the bedroom, exit the unit itself. But just remember, if you can close the door behind you, isolate it to that bedroom, keep it in that room. That is going to do a lot of good for everyone else that's trying to evacuate. And it's also going to help us by keeping it isolated into that room. Now, obviously, I touched on the kitchen before. It's an open space. There's nothing you can do. But once you exit your apartment, the best thing that you can do is close the apartment door behind you. What we know about fires now, obviously, they go off of oxygen and we have flow paths. So if it starts out in the kitchen and then you leave that door open, that fire is naturally just going to gravitate towards the front of your apartment, out into the hallway, and spread and make it more dangerous for everyone else, and even make it more dangerous for us as we're responding to it. Like I touched on before, the fire doubles in size every minute. So if we can keep it contained to one room, it'll limit how much it grows. With that door open and that flow path wide open, that fire is going to continue to grow and continue to spread, and it's going to make it more dangerous and hazardous for everyone. Obviously in this one here, it's saying we have pull stations. I know a lot of the older garden style apartments, they don't really have these pull stations, but the newer buildings do. So as soon as you get out of that apartment building, you should have pull stations on every floor of these new high rises. Pull that right away. That's going to be faster than calling 911. As soon as that pull station gets activated, the alarm company is going to receive a notification. That notification is going to get sent, and they're going to call our dispatch, and our dispatch will get us out there in a timely manner. This one, I'm not really a super fan of this one. I don't want anyone duct taping their door and trying to isolate and hide themselves inside. Again, depending on the type of building and the type of unit is going to determine what you can and cannot do. If you have one of those garden style apartments and you have a fire escape and it's in your neighbor's unit and it's spreading towards you, and you open the door to your apartment and the smoke is starting to bank down, obviously we don't want you going out into that smoky environment. So you can close the door and then work your way to that fire escape and get out. The good thing about these high-rise type ones, they're made of non-fire combustible material. So in certain situations, we'll tell people it's better to shelter in place. If you're on a floor below the fire, you're in a pretty safe area. That fire is not going to travel down. Even in these newer buildings, if you're above the fire, unless you're in an apartment directly above the fire, that's where it has the best chance of spreading. But if you're not directly above the fire and you have no smoke, sometimes it's just better to wait in your unit, shelter in place, and wait till the fire department comes. And at a safe time, we will usher people out to a safe stairwell that is not overcome. These new high-rise buildings, they have, 2-3 different stairwells. So we will find the best one to pull people out. While we are coming up one, going to attack the fire, we have another one that we use for egress, for getting people out of the building. That way they don't have any chance of getting overcome with smoke on their way out. Obviously, elevators is a no-no. I understand that sometimes, in these high-rise buildings, you may have people that are older, can't move around, people with disabilities. In that case, it's just better to find someone in the lobby, find the fire chief. He's usually the one with the white helmet on, and give him as much information as possible. If you have someone who you feel is in immediate danger and they have a disability of some sort, we will allocate crews to go up there and get that person out as fast and as safely as possible. Also, there's a way, if you cannot make it out the fire escape and you cannot go out your front door, open your window and try and get attention of the fire department. If you're on the side of the building, it could be, depending on what side of the building it is, your unit or the units of the tenants might not always be in front, visible to everybody. Important thing to do is call the fire department. I gave you that number. I'm willing to give it to everyone again, but it's important to have that dispatch number. So this way you could call dispatch and give them precise information. Let them know that you're on the 10th floor in apartment 10C and that you're trapped. And that way our dispatch can communicate with our chief who is on the fire ground. And that way he can pass that information along to other crews to go up there. And if we know exactly where people are, then it gives us a better chance of going up to get them and getting them out of that situation right away. And as far as people that are working in building management, whether it's an engineer, someone for the management company, it's always great to meet us at the scene right away. So this way, if you have any information about people who may be trapped, people with disabilities who can't move, an exact location of the fire, where it started, how it started, if it happens at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and we need to get access in, obviously always having a lockbox outside of these buildings that the fire department has keys to get into. Only we have these keys to these lock boxes. No one else can get in. So it gives us keys to get throughout the building, to get into the utility rooms, get all over. It's great to have, but if we have a representative there who can show us around, give us these keys, it makes our life a lot easier as far as maneuvering throughout the building and giving care to those people who need it as fast as possible. And I think that's pretty much it.
Lieutenant Niles, many, many thanks. And again, we will have a question and answer session after the conclusion of tonight's presentations. Our next presenter is Brian Gerber, a senior program manager with the American Red Cross. Brian, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, my PowerPoint presentation is not working today. I have a prep file, but I will get everybody that presentation. The Red Cross is here to support in the whole disaster cycle, which really is everything from preparedness to responding to disasters, recovery afterwards. The only phase that the Red Cross does not get involved in, which is more on the public sector side, is the mitigation and doing work like that. On the preparedness side, the Red Cross has multiple programs that are available to organizations and groups that we offer free of charge. The big ones for condominiums, building management companies are our Be Red Cross Ready, where we actually come in and we talk about everything from pet preparedness to tornadoes and hurricanes and how to prepare for them. But also on the back end of it is, how do you know what foods you should be keeping, what foods are perishable, your power's been out for 14 hours, what really needs to be thrown away? Because a lot of times people will be like, oh, it still smells good. Yeah, it may not be rancid yet, but there's certain foods that really should not be kept. Another big program is what we call our HFC program, which is our Home Fire Campaign program. The Red Cross about 10 years ago embarked on a campaign to install free smoke alarms for anyone that needs them in their residences. This program to date has over 2,100 lives saved, where people have called in after they've had a fire and the smoke alarms that the Red Cross installed helped the family get out safely. So that's 2,100 families that have called and told the Red Cross that due to our free smoke alarms, they were able to get out and be advised of a fire. And as we just heard, fires double in size every minute. So having those smoke alarms are critical. One of the things our smoke alarm program does is it's not just installing the smoke alarms in the bedrooms and in hallways and stuff like that, but it also, we work with the families to educate them on fire safety. So everyone gets a wipe-off board where they can actually draw a fire escape plan for their family, discusses about meetup sites, where you should meet up, and how to be safe about it. Because the first responders are coming in and you don't want to be crossing streets in front of them. So explaining, well, how do you decide on that safe meetup space for your family? So those are two programs. Then we have other programs that we connect with organizations like the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Brownies, and our schools, which is our Prepare with Pedro, which is a program really geared towards kindergarten through second or third grade, where we talk about preparedness at that young of a age group to help them understand what they're going to be experiencing. So those are just a few of our preparedness programs. And then, we respond to disasters. The Red Cross responds to over 60,000 single and multifamily fires in the US every year. Just within Rockland and Westchester, we respond to on average about 2 single family or multifamily fires a week. And as we're starting to see more and more is that even though it's a single family house, there may be multi-generations living together, or that single family house may have been converted for 4, 5, 6 families to all live in one place. So we respond to these fires, and we work hand in hand with the fire department to understand which people are going to be displaced, along with the building departments for the different municipalities. And then what we do is there's assistance that the Red Cross gives. Depending on the size and scope, it could be anything from opening up a congregate shelter to providing a client assistance card that has money on it to get a family off a street for a night or two before either their insurance kicks in or Department of Social Services is able to help them, or other nonprofits may be supporting them. On larger disasters, the Red Cross has plans with all the different counties for opening congregate shelters so that people need to evacuate if they're in waterfront areas where there could be flooding. And as we heard, sea levels are going up. We're seeing more of that as things are happening. So we'll open up congregate shelters, and those are open to anybody. Red Cross does not sit here and say, oh, you came from $1 million home, so you can't come in. Oh, you came from here. No, everyone is welcome within the Red Cross shelter system. So we offer at those shelters, we provide other services. We provide our disaster mental health folks, our disaster health services, our disaster spiritual care. These folks are also available for those single family fires also. So it is not just, okay, we're going to provide sheltering, but what are the other services, especially after a single or multifamily fire? You've had a fire in your apartment, your medicine needs to be replaced. As we all know, insurance companies don't always do the best at replacing stuff quickly. We work and support and advocate for the people that were affected by the fire, either through directly with the pharmacies or with their insurance companies to figure out how we can help replace those medicines. And there are funds available for that also. We also, on the larger disasters, we will be doing feeding for multifamily fires. Depending on the size and scope, if you have an apartment building fire, the Red Cross will open up a reception center until the fire is out, and we know, well, who can go back into the building? Is it just one line of the building that's affected because the fire was on the 5th floor, the water came down to the 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st floor? Is it the whole building that's being vacated because the fire was in the electrical panel room? So we work with building management to understand that, with the fire department, with the building inspectors, and we will open up shelters when needed. We will provide the different financial assistance that is available based on the size and scope of the disaster. Then we also have our recovery phase. And this is not just, okay, yeah, we helped you, you're done. Our recovery folks will be speaking to the families affected for 1, 2, 3, 5 weeks, depending on what their exact needs are. Their needs drive how that recovery process works. So if they need further assistance with doing home repairs, we will either advocate for them through building management. We'll work with building management to tell them what we're hearing from the clients, or there's financial assistance there for certain building repairs. But also on the other cases of the larger disasters, people may not be getting back in for 6 months or a year, depending on how bad the fire was or how bad the hurricane was. So hooking them up with those longer term resources and other services that are available to help support them. Recently, we had a couple of fires in a few buildings in Spring Valley back to back. The Red Cross was there. We opened up reception centers. We opened up shelters. After a few days, most of the clients were either housed by their building management company. And that's one of the things for this group, is to understand what your insurance will pay for, because a lot of times the insurances will pay for you to house the clients that have been affected. And we can actually help with that process by saying, okay, we know that this person went here, we know that this person went here. And then coordinating that, because the Red Cross does work with different hotels on different rates. So depending on how your insurance company wants to do it, there's ways that we can help coordinate that. But ultimately, it really boils down to you understanding and that collaboration piece. Going back to the preparedness, our programs are available, again, free of charge. All of our services are done through donors that contribute to the Red Cross. So there is no reimbursement that clients ever do for any of our services. And we're here to support the communities and the people that are affected by disasters, like I said, whether it's that single family fire all the way up through a wildfire, a hurricane, a tornado. And if I will put my contact information in the chat, so if anyone's interested in having a program for your property, we can discuss that further. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Our final presenter this evening is Gary L. Tuthill, Regional Director of Region 2 for the New York State Department of Homeland Security's Emergency Management Office. Gary, if you are ready, we are ready for you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sharing my screen now, so you should be able to see the presentation. Tell me if you can see it.
Looks great.
All right, excellent. So yes, I'm Gary Tuthill. I'm the Regional Director for our Region 2 from the Division of Homeland Security Emergency Services Office of Emergency Management. We, much like the Red Cross, we work with counties and local municipalities for planning, preparedness, response and recovery, even mitigation of disasters. And this whole topic here is preparedness. So we're working with you on that. What I'm going to talk about mainly tonight is our citizen preparedness training that we developed with the state, and I'm actually kind of surprised Brian didn't bring it up that the Red Cross office this as well. But thank you for not stealing my thunder, Brian. I appreciate that. We developed this several years ago. We present this around the state quite a bit, and let's see if I can get my slides to move. There we go. All right. So what the citizen preparedness training does is it gives residents tools and resources to prepare for any type of disaster, respond accordingly, and recover as quickly as possible. It gives residents the tools and resources to prepare for any type of disaster or emergency, respond accordingly, and recover as quickly as possible to pre-disaster conditions. Trainings are led by the New York National Guard, and we are there as subject matter experts. Alternatively, there's like I just mentioned, the Red Cross does these same trainings. It's the exact same presentation. It's our presentation, but the Red Cross schedules it and delivers it completely internally, free of charge as well. All of this is free of charge. So basically what I'm talking about, you can also get the same thing from Red Cross. I want to make that clear. Participants are advised on how to properly develop family emergency plans, stock up on supplies, and basically be prepared for the incoming disaster. You don't know when it's going to happen, so you want to be prepared right from the start. That's basically 4 steps. You want to develop an emergency plan. You want to build emergency supplies, build a kit, and your kit needs to be more than just you. It's your family, it's your pets. Potentially help your neighbor. If your neighbor is a vulnerable population or they need assistance, help them develop their plan and their kit as well. The kit, we hear a lot of people talk about they don't have any excess money to build their kit. And I will counter that a little bit with you don't have to build the whole kit this week. You can buy a piece of your kit this week, buy a piece of your kit next week, or a month from now, or whatever. And particularly with the food and water, we recommend food and water be stored up to 10 days. That's 1 liter of water per person for 10 days is a lot of water to store up. So the other question is, where do you have room? That comes into your bathtub storage, other things like that. Depends on what your plan is. But it's up to you to do your local planning on that and determine how you're going to do that. Your food, don't store food that's from an emergency supply shelter. Store food that you're going to eat, and then just rotate that stock. So you have 10 days of food always in your apartment or condo or whatever, and then you just rotate the stock as you go along, and you're always good that way. You want to be aware of your surroundings. Nelson mentioned it. Listen to the National Weather Service or your local media on what the incoming weather is, so you're prepared for storms that are threatening you. Be aware of what your local hazards are. What are the hazards that affect your community, and be prepared to meet those hazards. If you live in a flood zone, then flooding is a main concern for you. If you don't live in a flood zone, then target something else. But know those hazards. Be aware of all that. Sign up for New York Alert. New York Alert is also free of charge. It's somewhat cumbersome at times to sign up for, but once you're signed up, you get a lot of free messaging as far as storms and road closures or whatever you choose to sign up for, and get that. Get involved. Get involved by joining local volunteer groups, the Red Cross, Salvation Army, CERT teams, community emergency response teams, things like that. And if you're not familiar with what's available to you, contact your local chapter of the Red Cross or Salvation Army, or talk to your local emergency manager. They will know the volunteer organizations that are available, and perhaps you'll fit into one of those. Other tips. I mentioned learn about the hazards that may affect your community. That's very, very important. Do a quick little, hazard analysis. What are you looking at? Besides weather, there might be technological disasters. A power outage in your building, for instance, mentioned the elevators don't work. So how are you going to deal with that? What's your plan? Can you navigate the stairs effectively? And if not, you need to come up with a plan for that. So work with that. Don't forget your family needs. I mentioned that already, but family also includes pets. All right. Also consider families that don't live in your building, but may need help with planning. Spread the word. You're doing this, and it's a good thing that you're doing this. Make sure your other family members that live down the street, down the block, or in another state, doesn't matter. They should be doing the exact same thing. So spread the word. Go with that. Check on your neighbors. I mentioned that already as well. Pets, not just the food or what to do with them. Do you have a carrier for each one of those pets? If you have to evacuate to a shelter, you're going to need a carrier for those pets in order to get to the shelters. So do you have a carrier for each one of them? Do you have food for them, medications, all that to go with it? Pay attention to the news. I mentioned that. Have a NOAA weather radio available. Excuse me, I have a nasty cold and it's got a strong cough, so I apologize. But have the weather radio and other sources of media that you can get with. It was mentioned earlier too, keep your batteries charged in your devices if a storm's coming so that they have full strength. Learn first aid and emergency care so you can help take care of yourselves or your neighbors, because you are the true first responders. As I worked in EMS for 30 years, and I've been doing public safety for over 40. Never once was I the first one on the scene. There was always a bystander there. All right, if not the patient alone, but you're the true first responder, and so learn to be able to mitigate some of that yourself with first aid and CPR, and Red Cross can help with that as well. So another plug for the Red Cross. Next slide. All right, food and water I mentioned for 10 days. And again, the food, it doesn't have to be anything special, stuff that you store, non-perishable that'll last for 10 days, but stuff that you would eat normally, and rotate the stock. Health and hygiene, have your meds capable and ready to be able to go with you. Have a plan that you're going to take them, how you're going to transport with them if you have to evacuate. Hygiene, your kit, you have baby wipes or hand sanitizer, those things. Change of clothes. excuse me, maybe a pair of old glasses in case your glasses get damaged, so you're not completely blind. You know, you're just a little blind because you're a different prescription, but you know, whatever. Personal household, have your important papers in a safe that's going to protect them against flood or water and fire, and have them capable of transporting with you as well in a waterproof container, Ziploc bag, something along those lines. Cash, have some cash on hand, because if there's a long-term power outage, ATMs and banks don't work very well either because they don't have the electronics. So cash always helps. I know that's challenging for a lot of people, but again, a few dollars here and there, you'll be able. Or if a storm's coming in, just hit the ATM before the storm comes, just so you're safe, and then deposit it back in the account. Either way, tools on hand. So you know, you got your 10 days of food, and if it's canned food, but you have no power for your electric can opener, so have a manual can opener in your toolkit, right? So you can open your food. Other little tools, you know, just a multi-tool or something like that, because you never know what you're going to need. Go along those lines. But in your plan, your planning process and your hazard analysis, you'll identify some of the tools you might need if you really truly think through what you're going to do in the event of a power outage or event of a storm or a flood or whatever, where you have to evacuate, what you need to take with you. That's what you really want to look at. So again, this is all covered much more in depth. I just did this in a 5 or 10 minute overview. In the Citizen Preparedness Corps webpage, I have that listed here. If somebody wants to, you know, use your camera and take a picture of the screen or whatever. This website gives you a lot more information. To request the training, go to this website, New York Prepare at dishes.ny.gov, and you can request this training at your condo or whatever, or if you have another local facility that you can hold it at, and we'd be happy to do it. Or contact your local Red Cross chapter, and they can do the exact same training. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I strongly recommend this training when it comes to preparedness. It covers much more in depth of a little bit of everything that everybody's talked about so far tonight, but it covers it more in depth. So that's it. Thank you.
Gary, thank you. We'll now turn it back to Stuart Betheil for his concluding overview.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again to all of the presenters for their excellent presentations. One takeaway from this session is that you have to now take action. We've heard a lot of words, gotten a lot of information. The next step is to do something about it. It's useless if the residents of the buildings don't get the information that they need and how to prepare for all these different types of things, which will inevitably happen. So that's important for people to realize. And I think that if we have a situation where within the county or in the region, let me back up and say, each building or building complex should have an emergency preparedness and response committee. This is essential. I've been doing this for I don't know how many years. In the buildings that I've managed over the years, I encouraged it. It doesn't happen enough. You must get a committee together, 2 or 3 people, and begin to get the information on preparedness to the residents, and also do what's necessary to make the buildings prepared. Because if the buildings and the residents are prepared, then it takes a little bit of the burden off the first responders. They can devote their energies to more serious issues, because the people in buildings, and there are God knows how many buildings, right, in Westchester and the surrounding communities. If those people are self-sufficient to some degree, first responders can devote their energies to dealing with the more serious emergencies. So that's the takeaway. Get involved, take action, use the information that we've been given tonight, and make sure that you have, again, a committee of, can be 2 or 3 people, or some point person to deal with emergencies. I can tell you things are going to get worse going forward. both natural disasters and man-made disasters are going to, in my opinion, be more prevalent. Weather Bureau gave us a certain amount of information about natural disasters, and we all know the state of being in the country right now. People need to be prepared at many different levels. And again, thank you very much for your time.